This is Mayor Byron McAllister. We're going to go ahead and call to order the December 11th, 2023 meeting of our Board of Adjustment. And I'm here to call this meeting to order today since this is quite frankly a brand new board. The very first time we've had a completely separate board for our Board of Adjustment from our Planning Board, which for the sake of a town is a wise move as we have quite a few cases to look over as growth and development comes to Johnston County. As the first order of business, we're going to make some adjustments to the agenda. I ask that we adjust the agenda to reflect that we will first vote on a chair and vice chair for this particular board so that you as a board can take it away and do the work of the town. And then from there, I believe we're going to have Mr. Carruthers go over a brief piece about quasi-judicial hearings, and then you have your business to follow in the agenda as noted. So first, to get the nomination process going for a chair and vice chair for this board, I simply ask that any of you at any point in time speak up in the form of a motion to motion that a individual on this board be chair of the Board of Adjustment. So take a moment to deliberate in your mind. The first one that chimes up with a nomination, we'll take it into consideration, and then everybody can look stunned at who gets picked.
I'd make a motion to nominate Jenny Edwards for chair of the Board of Adjustments.
Is there a second?
Second.
She's got the right spot. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, congratulations, Ms. Edwards. You have been a fantastic servant of the town of Selma and the ETJ of Selma for many years. We appreciate your continued service. Next up, we are going to need a nomination for a vice chair for this Board of Adjustment.
I nominate Sarah McAllister.
Oh, my goodness gracious. We have a nomination. Do we have a second? We have a second. We have a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, that takes care of my time for the day. You folks have at it. I appreciate the effort that you will put in for the town of Selma. I tell everybody our Board of Adjustment is pretty much the Supreme Court for the town of Selma. You guys come and make sure we clean up legally and properly what needs to be done as far as our work, particularly as it relates to zoning and our UDO. So we very much appreciate you, your time, volunteering for the town of Selma. And you folks have a wonderful evening, and I hope your deliberations this evening are pleasant and fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner, the mayor, I'm going to stand up here. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Dalton is going to help me. He's already got the hearing PowerPoint posted. So let's just go through here and I'll start talking. And one of the things that makes any presentation much better is if you'll just ask me questions, because it's much easier for me to understand your concerns and what you think is missing in your book of knowledge regarding procedure and what a Board of Adjustment does by questioning. So I really do appreciate that and encourage that. So that's me. I'm here from the League of Municipalities. I've been in the league 3 years now. The league has been here since 1908. We are comprised of the 550 cities of North Carolina. We educate, we insure, and we lobby. And we take seriously all three of our jobs, and that's why I'm allowed to come here. I'm Deputy General Counsel of the league. Let's go forward again. I'm going to talk today about quasi-judicial hearings. And I didn't look myself, I should have, but I know we're going to talk about variances today. What other things does the Board of Adjustment of Selma do? Do you do appeals from zoning officers, or do you do special use permits? Maybe not. If you need to look at that, you've got a great attorney here that'll answer all questions for you after I walk out today. And anyone you want to stump me on, because it's always fun to play stump the lawyer who's talking at the moment. So let's go into quasi-judicial rules. And and thank you, Dalton. Interesting to note, at least for attorneys, this is the 100th anniversary of zoning in North Carolina. 1922, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce adopted its first proposed rules of zoning. Then, head of the chamber, Herbert Hoover, published a set of rules that became common all across the country by 1926. And really, the rules we're going to talk about today all originated in the United States in the 20s from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. Now, there are three types of decisions that every community makes, and this applies for city councils and it applies for personnel in the city. But in development things, you have legislative decisions, which would be a zoning or a rezoning. You have quasi-judicial decision, which we're going to talk about today. And then you have administrative decisions, which are the code enforcement officers or the building inspectors who have been given discretion to enforce the ordinances of the city and of the state. Those are their administrative duties. One of the interesting things about legislative versus quasi-judicial is that legislators, the electeds, are allowed to bring their personal knowledge and their prior promises, their campaign promises, to the dais when they sit down and make decisions. Elected board members hearing a rezoning could run on the promise never to allow the landfill inside the city limits. And then if the developer came with a proposal for rezoning to have a landfill in the town of Selma, then those same elected people could sit at that zoning hearing and vote against it and even say, I told my constituents I'd never support that, because legislators were allowed to be biased. It's the nature of politics. Now, they can't be unconstitutionally biased. We all know as Americans we can't make decisions based on race, creed, religion, national origin, gender, sex. But quasi-judicial are very different. They're impartial. So when the mayor says, you're the Supreme Court of the town of Selma, he's saying you're held to a standard much like a judge. That's why it's called quasi-judicial. And we're going to talk more about that tonight. I thought I would follow along here because I have some good quotes. From time to time, I will look down here. All right. We're going to talk today about variances. There are other quasi-judicial decisions, some of which may be done by your elected board itself. But it is not the type of board that determines whether it is quasi-judicial or not. It is the type of action of the board. If some of you were on the planning board, you had an advisory role for city council, but you were sitting in a legislative capacity. City council almost always sits in a legislative capacity. But you will be here, and I'm going to give, this is what the statute says, this is what your role is per the law of North Carolina. A decision involving the finding of facts regarding application of development regulations that requires the exercise of discretion when applying the standards of the regulation. People sometimes get a little uneasy. What do you mean I have to find facts? What do you mean I have to make a decision in my discretion? But as you're going to talk about more, as we're going to talk about more today, that is the crucial thing that the Board of Adjustment does. And the law commends you for it, and you play a valuable role. Dalton. crucial things you do, and I just said it, is you determine contested facts and you apply the standards of the regulations to the case before you. Now, legislators, by their nature, will consider public opinion because public opinion determines support in the community for positions that elected people represent. That's what democracy is. But in a quasi-judicial decision, it is entirely based on the people who stand before you at this podium, entirely based on the paperwork they bring with you that they hand to the clerk and ask to become part of the record of the hearing. The faces of the people behind me, if everyone's holding placards saying, "Don't listen to Tom," those are irrelevant in a quasi-judicial hearing. Because public opinion is not putting on evidence before you. You're in a judicial role. And so it's important to notice the difference between City Council and the Board of Adjustment. Sometimes you have to make decisions that are legally appropriate that may not be politically popular. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. You will not take into account what is popular. You're going to take into account the evidence that comes before you, that is presented. And let's go forward a little bit more. Now, I bet these words are familiar to everybody in the room. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. It's the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. That is the amendment that provides the Board of Adjustment its power. That is the same amendment that requires jury trials in America. It's the same amendment that requires a grand jury to meet in secret and vote before a felony charge can be leveled. And so if you feel like your position on the Board of Adjustment is a little more formal, it is. And let's just start with that. And remember, it's going to be all about the evidence. Now, this is what is every litigator from law school has these words burned in their mind. You don't have to remember them, but this just helps you further expand the knowledge. The evidence that is going to be put before you must be competent, substantial, and material. Competent means it must be trustworthy, reliable. Material meaning it is relevant to the standards before us, not some problem in another city. And it must be substantial, meaning it must be enough to tip the scales of justice. Because as a judge, that's what you're doing. We always, in a due process case, have the scales of justice. Which way does the evidence, the burden, the weight of the evidence tip? And in the end, it is always the applicant's burden to convince you, not the staff's. Now, other things that we know is that the applicant's going to be given the right to see all the material that is involved in the decision, to put on whatever relevant, competent material evidence they have regarding this, to question anybody on staff that is putting on evidence as well, so that they can be fully heard. And that's part of the crucial part of the process. And then, of course, there's the right to appeal in Superior Court. Sometimes, though, your personal interest may be so legally significant that you should not vote or participate in the hearing. And those are called conflicts of interest. And that doesn't mean you're a bad person if you have a conflict. It just means that the law recognizes that sometimes the personal interest outweighs your ability to make a decision in the public interest. First and foremost, you must be impartial. Would any of us want to go in front of any judge in a civil case or a criminal case, knowing that that judge already had their mind made up? You would think that's not a fair hearing. I'm being denied my rights as an American. You must be impartial, meaning you cannot have a fixed opinion which is not susceptible to change. This is what the Supreme Court says. No member should appear to be an advocate nor adopt an adversarial position to any party asking for a variance before the board. The demeanor of a judge. That's, these words all have meaning in the context of due process. One of the conflicts of interest you can have is undisclosed communications outside of the hearing. This is really tough because you're appointed by city council. It's public what the business of the board is. It is very tempting for a member of staff, or your best friend, or someone at your church, or maybe even the elected that appointed you, to pull you aside and say, wait a second, you're not going to grant a variance to increase the size of the loading dock on that commercial building next to City Hall that'll ruin the appearance of the parking. That's called ex parte communication, and it means communication outside of the parties in the litigation. And it's not supposed to occur. But it's inevitable. Sometimes it's going to occur. You may read about it in the paper. You may hear about it on the radio. You may talk about it with a friend. But if you've done those things, ethically you're required to say, I know nothing about this hearing except what I read in the newspaper, and it will not affect my ability to be impartial. If it turns out you've had 3 different meetings, all on this topic, and you don't disclose it, and it becomes known, then more than likely the Superior Court judge that will hear this case after you hear it will rule that you were partial and violated the constitutional rights of the applicant. And I'm sure none of you want to be in that position. Remember, it is what is presented in this room from this microphone or in writing handed to your clerk. Next, please. Now, could you determine whether or not your business partner deserves a variance on the business location? Or whether your aunt can have a variance so that they can extend their deck further back in their yard? Can you truly be impartial? Well, maybe you can, but that's one of those instances where the court has said your personal interest is too great and you should not participate in the hearing. So if you have a close family, and close family is much closer than you think. Spouse, parent, child, brother, sister, grandparent, grandchild, half relations, step relations, and in-law relations. So I think that pretty much covers it. And then business, we just talked about, and then associational relationship, totally undefined. One day it will be defined by the courts, but someone asked me, a year ago, well, can you hear your minister's variance? Sometimes the answer in some congregations would be, yeah, we're not that closely associated. He's just the minister. In other congregations, they'd be like, no, I can't make that decision. So these are things that you need to
determine yourself. And next slide, we're gonna talk about how you handle that. Oh, and then the financial interest. I think this one goes without saying. If you're gonna make money or lose money, you really shouldn't be making the decision on behalf of someone else. Because you're not being informed. Thanks. So how do you excuse yourself from voting? What the law says is that if you feel there's a conflict or someone alleges that you have a conflict, then you should declare. Now, since you have an attorney at your hearings, the good thing to do is go to your attorney beforehand and say, hey, I've got a problem, or I may have a problem. You know, what should we do? Because after you make your declaration, if the board doesn't agree with you, they can vote to overrule you. And then the majority decision would be, would uphold it. But it's always great to talk about these things beforehand because you may not be seeing it the way the attorney sees it, and you may have some benefit having those discussions. All right. I love this. Duty to vote. You decided to become a Board of Adjustment member to make decisions. I don't think anyone sitting at the dais here said, well, I'm going to make decisions unless the community's really upset about it, and then I'm going to slink away during the middle of the year. What the default yes rule in North Carolina says, and this applies to quasi-judicial decisions as well, while it does not apply to zoning decisions, but that's a discussion for another day, is that if you don't have a conflict of interest like we just discussed, but you do not vote, and the vote occurs around you, it is the duty of Dalton to record your vote as a yes. Don't get upset with it. He's following the law. Literally, if you're in the middle of a hearing and your phone goes off and it's your daughter and she's got a crisis and you've got to talk to her and without thinking you walk out of the room without being excused, because what you should say is, I want to take a break while I talk to my family member who's having a crisis. But if you say nothing and just leave and the vote occurs, your vote is yes. That's how important North Carolina places your role in these situations. All right. Now, I've sort of highlighted this as well, but I'll just bring it up one more time. If you think you have a conflict of interest, whether you decide you do or not, someone else in the community is going to have the same thought. Go on and bring it up. Talk to your attorney. You could say, you know, Madam Attorney, I knew this person 10 years ago, haven't talked to them recently. We were best friends in high school. Is that too much of an associational relationship? Do I have a conflict of interest? Well, no, we talked about it. I don't think you have a conflict of interest. Then you move on down the road. It's much better to handle it on the front end than to have someone come to you on the street 2 weeks later and says, I know how that person got the variance because you knew them in high school. You guys were best friends. Did you violate the law? So just get ahead of the problems and you'll be in a much happier spot. All right, thank you. 4/5 super majority to get a variance. Counting 5 people in front of you. 4 out of 5 of you have to agree that a variance is deserved. So everything else is a majority or some form of majority, but this is the only vote in North Carolina that requires 80%. In fact, most boards, when there are only 5 members and they don't have an alternate, if one person is not at the meeting, maybe their car broke down, maybe they're sick, they generally allow the applicant to have a continuance if they wish for it, because otherwise the decision would have to be unanimous. Next, please. Here's how you count your votes. 5 people are on your board, subtract the number of vacancies. That's not people who are not in the room. That's people who have resigned from the board. That is a vacant position. And then subtract the number with conflicts. And then you determine 4/5. And if you're like lawyers, then that puts a little terror in your brain because you're like, oh, I've got to do math. But I've got a voting totals things that I've handed out here before, and I'll make sure it's here again. But if you you can determine 4/5 very easily. All right, let's go. Let's talk about process. Next, please. Okay, this is what you're going to do before the hearing. You're going to mail the notice to the applicant, which is 99.9% of the time the owner of the property. But the law does allow someone to request a variance for someone else, though I've never seen it in my 35 years as being a lawyer. And then the people around get mailed notice as well, the ones whose property you touch, that abut the property. That's only fair. And then you post it on either the land itself or on the thoroughfare right next to the land. And we've all seen this variance request, very similar, different sign, zoning, rezoning request. And those are things that must be done under the law. And your clerk will post an advertisement for 10 to 25 days of the hearing. All this stuff is always done in the background so that you guys don't even have to consider it. Though it always is helpful for when the planning staff writes the facts, that they write in the facts that they did do the notice according to law and describe what they did, in case it gets appealed and goes to the Superior Court. Next, please. All right, now the hearing comes to order. You heard your mayor at the beginning of the meeting tonight. The chair lady will be doing that same thing when the meeting begins. It always is good to have introduction, let people know what we're doing here, why, that this is a quasi-judicial hearing, that we'll be putting on evidence. It will be sworn, just like y'all were sworn to take your seat here. Anybody who testifies will be sworn. They will put on the evidence. Once the evidence is closed, the board will deliberate. They'll make a decision, and there's a right of appeal. So let's go a little bit more into detail on this. What is the opening? Well, if you say you're in a quasi-judicial hearing regarding a variance, and we are going to go over the standards here. And I've given you a piece of paper that really gives you an outline of everything your decision is going to have, and we're going to go over it in just 1 minute. And then if anybody needs to recuse themselves, which means remove themselves from the hearing because they have a conflict of interest, that is when it occurs. And then you swear the witnesses. Next. Then the staff will begin. They may have 10 points. They'll read it into the record. They may have a map or an outline of the property showing where the setbacks are and what needs to be varied. Then the applicant will present their evidence. Other people who may be abutting property owners could have standing to also testify. Your attorney may have to make a decision on standing. If someone comes from Clinton to give an opinion on this, I doubt they have standing. But if they're an adjoining property, they do have standing. And then the board listens to all of this. Next, please. We can skip this one, but in special use permits, which are quasi-judicial, how the values of property or traffic are experts, and I should have taken that out, so we'll just move on with that. Now, I've talked about the burden, talked about the scales. The applicant will stand here, takes their evidence metaphorically and puts it on the arm of justice, and it goes down, and then you determine whether that is sufficient or not. And if the staff is on the other side, then that, it may stay in balance and not tip in favor of the applicant. Next, please. Then you deliberate. And you don't get to go into closed session to deliberate. Now, you could go into closed session and ask your attorney about the standards that you're making the decision. But the moment then you start deliberating after talking to the attorney, your attorney is going to say to you and say, wait a second, you got to deliberate out in open. That's the requirement in this proceeding. Next, please. Then you need to make a motion. And when I first started in local government law, motions seemed like, oh, they got to make a motion. I know people get nervous because they got to speak. I've got to make a motion. But when we have finished going over this, you're going to feel fine about it. You're going to understand what you're going to do. Then your decision itself has to be in writing. It's going to have to be signed by the chairman. Again, not a big deal. If you fill in these things, you can get to where you need to go. And then, of course, it goes to Superior, where a judge will look at the decision and determine if you've met the constitutional requirements, and then uphold your decision, provided it is correctly papered over. So, let's go on. Let's talk about variances. There are 4 standards you need to know about. So, everybody pick up this legal size piece of paper here. And, if we had this case going forward, the case probably has a number from staff. We know it's a variant. We'll have the names of the applicants there. And the first thing that the chair will ask is, does anybody may have a motion regarding accepting the facts presented by the staff? And if you're satisfied with the work of your staff, then you would say, I move that the board accept staff findings 1 through 12. Or you still have the freedom to do so. So if you look up on this board here, and I'm having trouble reading because I'm 3 feet away, the very first of your 4 factors that you must hunt is unnecessary hardship result from the strict application of the ordinance. So that is your first thing here under hardship. So let's just think about this for a second, because this is the common one. Let's say that I'm the applicant. I own a home in Selma. There are 10 feet side setbacks on my property, 15-foot rear setback on my property, meaning that the outline or footprint of my building can't go beyond that. And I'm wanting to put a deck in, and because my property is slightly unusually shaped, maybe like a triangle in the back, the side setback lines would prevent me from putting a deck on the back of my house. Can that be an unnecessary hardship? Yes. It's very common. But what the applicant will be saying is, these decks are common in the neighborhoods. They help everybody enjoy the property. It raises the value of the property. But because my lot has these unusual side lines, I have an unnecessary hardship because my deck cannot fit. So I would like to have a variance to encroach 3 feet on the left property setback line. 3 feet on the right, so that my deck can be a rectangle and not a triangle that matches the shape of my lot. That would be a reasonable decision should the board wish to hear. What the board would do is then say, this would result from would result from a hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. Then we go to the second, which is that the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property. If every lot in the subdivision had the same triangle in the back, then you would not grant the variance because it is not peculiar to the property. I argued one in Greensboro about 4 years ago before I joined the league, infill condo development of 3 units, and every other condo in the neighborhood had a deck overlooking the golf course. But on these 3, because of an unknown defect in the ground that wasn't discovered until the building construction started and required moving of the building, no one could have a deck in the back unless they got a variance so that the rear setback could be encroached upon for the deck. And at the end, they said that this was an unnecessary hardship and it was peculiar to the property. They didn't mind that 3 out of 60 had it. It was still peculiar. Then 3, that the hardship does not result from actions taken by the applicant themselves. The classic example of this is, and we can go to the 3rd slide, it doesn't quite matter, but if I'm sitting on a 5-acre lot in the city, well, let's just say a 1-acre lot in the city, which is a big lot for a city, and I subdivide my lot right in the middle, half and half. But all of a sudden, my house is right up against the side setback line on the half-acre lot I just created. And then I run to the Board of Adjustment and say, I want to put the garage on that side of my house, but it's too close to the property line. Well, that may be something you should have thought about before you subdivided your lot and adjusted the property line so that you were in compliance with the law. That would be a classic example of a hardship you have created. And one of the gray areas in the law before the new 160D adoption that came out in 19 and 20 was if you buy property and you know it needs a variance, that is not a self-created hardship. So you're buying a property and they say, well, you know that old 20s garage is too close to the property lines. Just because you buy the property knowing that that's a non-conforming use on that garage and you come to the Board of Adjustment and you want to make it conforming so that if it burns down, you can rebuild it at the same spot. That's permissible. You just have to meet the other criteria. And then finally, the 4th is that it is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. You know, that's pretty hard to disagree with. The board can decide it either way. The court's going to follow your decisions, more than likely. So, but remember, you're not doing it for popularity. You're not doing it because the elected officials who appointed you told you to do it. You are being given the discretion to how to allow the citizens of Selma to improve their property in ways that do not affect the overall scheme of things, and have small adjustments to the ordinances without rezoning. Okay, well, what if I come in and I say, well, I want to put a duplex in. I need a variance in the single-family home district to put my duplex. Absolutely prohibited. Because you can't vary a use. So you can't turn a single family into a multifamily with a variance. You can't turn a residence into a commercial property with a variance. You have to stick with the use, but you can adjust the edges on the setbacks or the height restrictions. Those are permissible. And that is really the bread and butter of what Board of Adjustments do. Now, another interesting thing is, what if I need to put a handicap ramp on my mother's front porch because she's now using a wheelchair, and it goes all the way to the edge of the property in violation of the setback? Federal law says those are to be handled by staff. They do not require variances. Anything related to the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Board of Adjustment doesn't have to consider. And the staff will know their job, which is, if it's not affecting someone else, it can be done under the Americans with Disabilities Act. But that just is one less thing that you have to be concerned about. And, you know, I mentioned the use thing, but the final thing on this form is, will not result in a use variance. Because that's where a lot of boards get conflicted. Not conflicted, but make mistakes. And so we just went on and put it in this one. And this is one that came from the city of Garner. And I'm good friends with the city attorney there. I used to work with her. And she does good forms. Now, I think that is my presentation. So, anybody got a question?
When we're swearing in the witnesses per applicant, do we swear in all of the witnesses at one time?
You can do it that way, yes.
Okay.
You're gonna be fine. And I, of course, appreciated Dalton's, you know, you can swear or you can affirm. And it doesn't have to be on the Bible if your faith demands another book. Other questions? No, we're gonna do great. It's, you know, it's, when I bought my house in Greensboro 20 years ago, the house was built 8.5 feet from the property line. And the side setback was 10 feet, which made my house non-conforming. I didn't know it at the time. Which meant if my house had burned down or been damaged more than 50% by fire, I would not have been able to rebuild it because it violated zoning. So I went before the Board of Adjustment, and we went through what I just described with you, and they felt that this was an undue hardship because it's a non-conforming home that has been in existence since 1990 that would not be allowed to be rebuilt in the neighborhood where it damaged more than 50%. And it resulted from conditions that were peculiar to the property. Well, the lot is slightly unusual in my neighborhood and a little smaller than the ones on the other side. And I pointed out that the smaller size and the way the trees are set, you know, made it unusual in the neighborhood. And that it did not result from actions I had taken. I didn't build it there. And that it was within the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. That variance was granted so that my house now has the legal right to be 8.5 feet from the property. I didn't, you know, I sleep a little better at night because of it. But those would be the typical things that a Board of Adjustment would provide. Here are the relief valves. There's a lot of zoning in your UDO, a lot of regulation. Some of it will have unintended consequences that are unduly harsh on peculiar pieces of property that people need relief. Be generous when appropriate. Because remember, it's going to take 4 of you.
I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it true that the hardship has to be to the property and not to the owner?
Yes. It's all, we're talking about the property.
Okay. And if you are an LLC or a corporation, must an attorney be present to represent them?
There is case law in a unrecorded decision, I believe, which says an LLC should have an attorney, not the owner of the LLC.
Should or must?
Must. An unpublished decision is not controlling. It is evidence of law. So I'm going to leave that for your attorney because I think the majority of cities, towns, and villages in North Carolina would not enforce it. But it is what the Court of Appeals said in their unpublished decision. One of the things we say a lot at the league is we're not competent to give you legal advice because the general statutes say you shall have a city attorney. We can tell you what the law is, but we can't tell you whether to go left or right.
Thank you.
With that, I may wind up. Y'all been very patient. And remember, every other question will be answered completely by your attorney. Otherwise, we're still here at the league. We're available. I'm available by phone. And I appreciate the chance to meet with y'all.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to remember to take my USB this time.
Megan, would it be appropriate at this time to start with the roll call as if we're just beginning the meeting? Yep. Okay. At this time, we are going to do a roll call. We have Jennifer Edwards present, Sarah McAllister.
Here.
Present.
Present.
Mark Peterson.
Present.
We have Angela Thomas and Anthony Lewis. Tony Lewis.
Here. Brent.
All right, we do have a quorum as all members are in attendance. Is there any conflict of, anyone can think of that you have a reason not to participate in a vote with the cases, well, with the first one? No. Okay. We are hearing this is a quasi judicial hearing. It is based on facts, not public opinion. We have been trained by Mr. Carruthers from the League of Municipalities. And so therefore, the first item of business is the petition for variance at 802 West Walnut Street. And now the staff will present evidence.
So what you'll want to do is make a motion to open the first quasi judicial hearing.
Okay.
And once you shift into that, you will take all of the evidence in, close the hearing, deliberations, and then you'll vote. So
Okay.
go ahead and open that up, and then we can get staff to.
Do I have a motion to open the variance for the 802 West Walnut Street?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Do we need a second?
Yes, usually you'll do a motion a second,
Okay.
and then you'll roll it.
Angie did.
She did
I
a
did.
second.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So okay, motion passed. Okay, at this time, staff will do a presentation.
Don't do it if Laura's gonna be on.
I can. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes. And then what you'll want to do, and it's going to be up to the board, but you go ahead and swear in your witnesses so you can do it all at once. So you can have Laura and the applicant, or anybody who's going to be testifying on behalf of the petition, go ahead and swear.
So we can go ahead and do that now.
Yes, you'll want to go ahead and do that before you take it.
Okay, is the applicant here for the 802 West Walnut Street variance? Okay, and do you have witnesses with you? You'll come forward, yes. And you'll state your name and address for the record.
Thanks. Michael Gerken, and I'm at 802 West Walton Street, so. And actually, my son, I own the property, but I have a lifetime right. So I have signed it over to my son and his brother. And then I got Clint Dupree, he's one that wants to buy the section that I'm trying to get the variance on.
Who will be testifying?
I don't know if they'll say anything. Clint may say something, I don't know. I
Okay,
will.
then you would all have to be sworn in.
Yeah, if you think anyone might speak, just go ahead, just for the record. And if you don't speak, that's fine, but at least we've got you sworn in.
Dalton, will you do the swearing in?
Yeah, either way. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, and then you can either just put your hand on the Bible or you can just affirm.
I can affirm.
All right,
I don't know about them.
that's fine. All right, so do you swear? We'll just do it all together and Laura will do the same. You'll hear her chime in and say I do. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God, or your affirmation?
I do.
Okay, thank you. You may remain and you may sit down.
And then typically you'll go ahead and have staff give the background information and then provide any testimony, answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, is staff available for the presentation?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, board. My name is Laura Oxley. I've been helping the town of Selma the past few months with planning and zoning matters. I'm so grateful for your service. We've had a few applications that we've been anxious to get on your agenda, so thank you so much for your service. Tonight, the first application packet on your agenda is 802 West Walnut Street. This is, as you know, a request for a variance in order to subdivide the lot. I'm going to give you a little bit of background information, and then we'll go into why this needs a variance, because staff does handle subdivisions at a staff level, but when there's a conflict in the ordinance, we have to approach you for a variance. So the background of this lot is zoned R10. It currently contains 2 dwellings, so 2 homes. It is staff's understanding, based on the application submitted by the property owner, Mr. Gerkens, that he would like to subdivide the lot so that he can sell one of the dwellings. So why would a variance be required for this? The proposed subdivision won't meet the ordinance's minimum lot dimensions, and it will create some setback issues. Given how this lot will be subdivided, I tried to help with some visuals in my packet. And of course, if any of my representations don't properly or accurately reflect what the applicant is requesting, I obviously defer to him on what his plan is. But if you'll look on, it's page 8 of my packet. I took the survey and I highlighted what the new lot boundary lines will look like. And then I applied it to the ordinance to try to help give everyone a visual of what the conflict is. So what is called by the surveyor the remaining lot, which would be the lot outside of this yellow highlight, doesn't really present any issues. There is a slight issue that I'll show you on the next page. But the main issues are with the new lot. The accessory structure in the back that's labeled barn shed will cause an issue with the ordinance. I think I got a little ahead of myself, and I apologize. The first issue is lot dimensions. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. So as is, the current lot meets the minimum square footage, but with this subdivision, the new lot will be shy of what is 10,000 square feet that's required. So again, the new lot is the yellow highlighted box in the survey. Another problem with dimensions is this lot will not meet the minimum widths, which is the ordinance requires 75 feet, but the new width of this particular lot would be 60 feet. So there's 2 issues with the dimensions of the lot. And then, as I've kind of jumped ahead, the setbacks. If you will go to page 9 of the packet, in red, I tried to circle the new lot lines that create setback issues. So, the front yard setbacks aren't changed at all. So I didn't deep dive into that because that lot line is already established and it's not changing and it's not an issue that we're reviewing. But if you will look at the barn, as I've kind of jumped ahead and alluded to, and a carport on the side lot, these won't meet the setbacks in the ordinances. Lastly, I wanted to acknowledge that the property is in the watershed overlay district, but I don't believe that this triggers anything with this subdivision. Those ordinances speak to development, and the lots are not, there's nothing that's being developed at this time. Maybe that's something down the road for the applicant, but at this juncture, we're not talking about any developments. I just want to acknowledge it is in the watershed because that is something that's on the reports that staff has been asked to provide feedback on. But as I said, I don't believe that this triggers anything specific to this application. So on the next page 10, went ahead and it seems like you might have a handout that the gentleman from the league gave you, which is great. I wasn't sure if you were going to have that, so I have copied and pasted the statutory standards. You've already had your training on this. How I've seen boards do it in the past, that I think, Madam Chair, if you don't standards, so that it helps you at the end make your determination. That's just a procedural, a procedure that I saw at a previous town that I thought was really helpful, and so I made a note and I always try to pass it on. But of course, however you want to proceed is completely up to you. A couple of things I wanted to note. I believe on the survey there is a typo in the street name, and I just wanted to confirm with the applicant that that this is Walnut and not Watson Street. I had a question about access points also, but that might be getting a little ahead of myself. Probably should reserve those for when the applicant comes up and speaks. Those are just a little bit more shopkeeping questions that I had. But otherwise, I hope that the charts in the staff report were helpful. This one was tough for me to try to isolate and find a way to demonstrate what is being asked of the Board of Adjustment. So I hope that those visuals were helpful. If the applicant believes that they weren't accurate representations, I hope he will tell me. That was certainly not my intent at all. But with that, that's the conclusion of my report, and I would like to formally ask the Board of Adjustment to accept my staff report into their evidence.
Do we have any other questions for staff? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the staff presentation as presented?
Make a motion to approve. Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. At this point, we will have the applicant speak and present your evidence. And at this point, does the evidence, or afterwards, it will go to Dalton to be put into
the record.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
As she was saying, that they do have, I got a map here of what she's talking about. It's here. I got this from the surveyor, Mr. Jerry Wall, and he does have Watson Street, and it is Walnut Street. It's not Watson Street. And what this lot is here is I'm gonna back up a little bit now. My granddaddy moved to this lot in 1990, and it went down from them to my daddy, and then it came from him to me, and we've been on this property since November of 1990. And the lot that the house that I'm trying to sell here, the reason that we're cutting it off so short is because these barns has, over the years before the town annexed, this section of town into the city limits, my daddy built these barns back here because he had a business there, and the barns just extend all the way out right to the edge of the 50-foot property line, of the lot line. So there's 3 lots there. They're 50 foot by 150 foot. And they, from the front to the back. And for me to have access to these barns, cause the entrance to them is on the side towards the left-hand property, is from, there's a gate right here at the back of the new lot area. There's about a 10-foot gate there that I have access to go to these barns. And so when me and Mr. Dupree talked about all this, he's gonna give me access as trying to think what the name of it is. But anyhow, he's gonna give me the access to get to my barns through that gate over the property here, you know, if we can section it off. And he can tell this to him, but he also told me as far as that property from the barn shed to the back of that lot, he said he didn't even want that property. He said all he wanted was the house and what little bit goes with the house. So that's why we're trying to get a variance. It'll help me, it'll help him. I know that guy's up here a while ago talking about the, the variance is for the land, not the person. But, anyhow, I don't know, there's a lot of places in this section of town. You know, they talk about this as an R10 section. You don't, unless it's a brand new house that's been built in the last few years, there's not any R10 lots in that area. They're all 7,500 lots. And, so for me to get a R10, I'd have to tear down half the barn. But that wouldn't be physical for me to do. And I find a lot of lots in that area that is just above 4,000 square feet. And that's what we're asking for, is a little over 4,000. And I know if you go to some areas there where I live, there's lots that's got give me just a minute. West Oak and River Road, there's a lot there that's got just a little over 4,000 square feet. That's within 2 or 3 blocks of my house. And then on West Oak and North Center Street, there's a lot there that's got 4,300 square feet. Now, then there's on West Waddell and North Center Street, there's a lot there with 5,000 square feet. So there's a lot of lots in this section of town that has less than the 10,000 or the 8. It used to be 8,000. It used to be R8 area, and then and Waddell and across the road in the corner there from North Center, it's 5,600 square feet. And then you got 5,200 square feet over by the cemetery. These are the ones that I actually looked up on the computer. And so it ain't, I'm not trying to get the impossible done, because there's other areas over there that's like that. And we're not trying to, I'm not trying to sell this property I'm not trying to section it off to sell it, to do a subdivision, because that's not what it's there for. It's only to sell this one particular dwelling, because nobody has lived in the house in the last approximately 5 years. Because I lived in it for over 40 years, because it was my daddy's home place. That particular house was, and I don't need it, and he feels like, Mr. Dupree feels like he does need it, and so he even shared with me way before my mother passed away that he would let, if I ever decided to sell it, to let him know. And as soon as he found out that it was ours, we've been working on this ever since November last year. And because there was one of the inspectors that told me if I would get the land surveyed, that he would work towards signing it off. And the day that Mr. Ball sent the paperwork in to him, the town got rid of him, so he didn't get it signed. And so we've been dealing with this ever since all that took place. And I'm just telling you know what we've been through and what we've done, why. I don't know anything else to say.
One thing, he's not here to corroborate that, so basically that's hearsay.
Well,
Can't
that's true.
accept that as value.
But it'd been sold before now if he had done what he's supposed to do. But
The other
like you
thing-
say, that's neither here nor there. That's why we're here today.
The other thing I would say is that anything your neighbor has promised or whatever, he's not here to corroborate that, is he?
He's the one that wants to buy it.
I'm talking about the neighbor at the
Oh.
back that has told you you could use,
No, that's.
The land is
that's-
access.
No, if he buys this house, he's the one that is gonna give me the access to that piece behind it.
so that person is here?
Yeah, that's him.
Okay. Okay, okay. Now, who decided, on how the property would be divided? Who decided how the property would be divided?
Well,
Since you were
me and
dividing.
him talked about it, and, before the surveyor came and looked at it, me and Mr. Dupree did.
Well, for example, if the carport, is now too close to the property line, could that have been done differently so that it would have met the requirement?
Well, the only way it could be done differently is instead of making it 60 foot, we'd have to shoot it out there about 100 foot. And that's way over towards my house that I live in.
But that would have made it, meet the setback requirement.
The setback wouldn't be that much.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but the setbacks on this house was done like before the town ever took this property in as an annexation.
Yes, sir.
And, the house was built there, the house that was there burnt down in 1927. And it was, my granddaddy built it back to this, to where it's what it is today. And this house has been sitting here since 1927. And it's not like, you know, Mr. Dupree doesn't want to tear the house down and rebuild. He just wants to remodel and rent, that's what he's told me about. And so, I mean, if I was to go farther to the right, then, that's getting over here toward my house, you know, to get the footage that the town is asking for.
The setback there will be required would be
And I-
8 feet.
So,
So the setback, that would be required there would be 8 feet from that carport.
that's a solution to that. I talked to both of them.
Now, you also divided this property, is it correct, into 3 lots?
The property has got 3 lots on the original deed. And what we're trying to do is just offset enough that we can get a deed for this section. Do y'all actually have I know what she was telling y'all on different pages, but can I show y'all this page that I have?
We have.
Got a smaller
Okay.
copy, would you? Thank you.
But, and as far as that back lot, that, where it says parcel 1, that the back there, see that, I already own that. I mean, that's part of that particular lot. We're just trying to section that lot off to put the house in it. And for me to have the back part for myself.
But I think what our chair is trying to say is that in order to fit into the setbacks that follow the R10 requirement, extending the property line from the carport or the driveway, 'cause that's a driveway going into that carport, as well as even that back line, moving into parcel 1 to give you some setbacks against that shed that would fit more into the R10 requirements.
But if you move the back line back farther into away from the shed, then that's gonna actually put the property line inside the barn.
Is there a barn on the drawing that you have?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we see that?
On the right side by the carport, you'd have to extend that by about 10 feet, 5.5 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Below that 5 feet, 9 inches.
No, I'm talking right here.
Yeah, right. this?
No, the property line. If you were to extend this property line back so that it fit the requirements.
But it would be into the barn area though.
I see what you're saying. Well, even if you cut in and extended this back.
So if I have to move
Because that was the concern, was the barn and the shed right here. Doesn't meet the setback requirement.
Because the barn is on the actual line, property line. Yes. It's on the
And then
line.
same here, you got 2 feet right now. You need 8. So bringing this out 6 more feet, just the property line itself.
Okay, let me ask you this. How would I adjust this side? That's the 6 feet on this side.
You're right, but I think, Megan,
Yes.
so the question is, looking at page 9. The left side of the new lot, the setback is labeled as, is that 6 feet, sir?
It's approximately 6 feet.
6 feet. Because that is existing, that would be grandfathered in, correct?
The setback that's already there with the lot line.
Correct, on the left side beside the, yes.
Yeah, that's a, pre-existing, non-conforming use. So you're just gonna factor in the areas that Laura has brought to your attention, since that left is already kind of an issue. It's been used that way.
If that was grandfathered, if that side's gonna be grandfathered in, how come the whole thing wouldn't be grandfathered in?
Not
Because you're
necessarily.
making changes to the property. I think what we're trying to do is offer,
Compromise.
exactly, that there could have been another way to do this so that it would have met requirements and you could still do what you're intending to do.
Square foot.
So if the barn shed was not there, then there wouldn't be no problem with that backseat, right? Cause it'd be far enough from the house.
Correct.
Correct. But you still have your carport issue.
Yeah. It's like everybody's gonna lose the carport in the shed. I'll get him up here and let him decide on all that, cause,
Mr. Chair.
yeah, you won't come here and talk, go ahead, I done all I know to do. I got that, all I'm gonna tell you is I got to tear the shed down, I got to tear the carport down.
Sir, would you give your name and address for the record?
My name is Clint Dupree. My name is Clint Dupree. My address is 1137 Wilson Mills Road in Smithfield, city limits. My wife and I are interested in buying the property from Mr. Kirkin and his wife. We've been interested in buying it for a number of years. We struck up a more serious deal with him last November, a little over a year ago. As he was saying, we've talked to a bunch of people with the town. Y'all have had a lot of turnover. I don't know what all's been going on, but different positions changing. And he's been real persistent, talking to the town, and I've talked to a few people, but like I said, we've had a planner out there. We've talked to an interim town manager. We've talked to a bunch of different people, and everyone either wasn't sure what to do or just delayed. And next thing you know, they weren't part of the decision-making anymore. They didn't work here or weren't part of the board. So I'm not sure about all that, but it's been a long time coming. So we appreciate y'all's time and that we could possibly reach a decision tonight or whenever, yes or no, just because it's been frustrating to go like 13 months just trying to reach a decision. It seems like it should be able to be found sooner. Okay, so as far as what he's talking about the property, he was saying it was 3 lots originally. He's not, if I'm understanding correctly, he's not wanting to have 3 lots or anything like that now. He's just wanting to separate it into his lot and his house and this house, 802, or with its own, 806, sorry, yours is 802, with its own lot, so that we can buy it from him.
So in essence, it would be 2 lots. then.
Right, making it 2 lots is what he's wanting to do. My wife and I have already bought, 712 West Walnut Street from him back in 2011. Is that correct? We've known him for a number of years, and, so we bought and paid for that a long time ago, and that's the house on the other side of him. So I wish it was adjoining with this property, but would still be in between us, but that's okay. We're good neighbors with him. We're actually interested in living there ourselves. This is not for house flipping or whatever. We own 3 properties in Johnson County, and we've never sold a property in Johnson County. We're just interested in buying this property as an investment for our future, for our kids' future. This will benefit us, our family, our children. We're interested in living in one. We've got, my wife's parents interested in living in the other. You know, Mr. Gherkin has been great working with me on it. What he's speaking of as far as driving across the property on the back corner to access his barn and back lot, he asked, could he have I'm not sure now if the correct term is easement or right of way. I think it's an easement, which is fine by us. And Mr. Ball was going to put that in writing, or I don't know if he has or not, or the attorney that was doing the closing was going to record that. But we were interested in having an easement just across the back corner so that he could access part of his yard without having to go to extra trouble to get to his barn.
I think the problem we would have here is that the easement is not in place right now.
Right, right. Mr. Ball may have to draw that up. I'm not sure who needs to record that. I mean, he has a physical way of reaching that part of his property without that easement. So I kind of feel like that easement, whether it exists or not, probably may be between me and him. It doesn't have to be, but I'm fine with it. If he's fine with it and it's recorded that way, then it would just be him driving his lawnmower or something across there once in a while to get back to his barn. But anyway, the carport and the barn, if you're speaking of the barn that's on that lot with that house issue, not his larger barn that's on the property. So, we're most interested in the house. Obviously, we'd hate to lose the carport. We would hate to lose the little barn. Maybe if you could advise us, I think you said an 8-foot setback. I don't know if me and Mr. Gherkin and his wife can renegotiate a little bit more property on any side of anything that would make the setbacks work. If not, like he was saying, the carport can be demolished. Ultimately, the little shed can be demolished, but we would rather keep them intact like they are. He's repaired the house a lot. It looks great on the outside. What I will say about this is, if you decided to allow us the variance, nothing really changes on the street. It's not like we have a piece of land and we're saying, hey, if you allow us to cram some houses in here, we'll do it. Nothing will look different. That house, like he said, has been there for decades and decades, and it'll look the same tomorrow, next week, next year, other than improvements. So we're not close to anyone. I mean, relatively like anywhere else in Selma, but there's definitely some brand new houses in Selma within sight of this one, right there nearby, that are much closer, less than the width of this room, between the houses. This house is not that close to his house or any neighbor, so it would exist exactly like it exists now. He's just interested in selling it to us. Yes, ma'am. You want to ask me a question?
So the hardship would be to the applicant because he could not sell the property.
Well, I would think that would be one hardship. And when it comes to his shop back there, like you said, his dad had the shop back there. They've had it forever, where they ran their business. That's very important to him, that shop. I don't want to own any land into his shop or mess that up. He spends a lot of time in there. It means a lot to him that him and his dad spent a lot of time there. And so he has a history with that property. And anyway, so it would benefit our family, our children. It'll benefit his family and his children financially, and investment for the future in the community. Like I said, I only invest really in Johnson County, and we're business owners in Johnson County and have ran multiple businesses. So, I'm just looking to, I will say this, what I think about older homes, some of them may need demolition, but this is a pretty little house. And I think it has a future in the community. All the new houses coming in, I know they're, a lot of the same cookie cutter type stuff. I feel like the older homes here in every community, whether it's Clayton, Smithfield, whatever, your older homes are kind of like the heart and soul, the fabric of the quilt of the community, if you will, that makes it appear what it is. If everything was new cookie cutter, it would look like anywhere else, any other state, anywhere. So that little house is just one more piece of what makes Selma Selma, and we want to make it be everything it can be beautiful, and be a home again. And like I said, on the street physically, nothing will change. It won't move any closer. It's not building up or being any closer to anyone than it already exists and has been existing. It'll just be that me and my wife own it instead of him and his wife.
But you understand that,
Yes.
our role is to look at the property and not the hardship of the owner.
Well, I don't know. I understand what you're saying about that. Yes. I'm just trying to, tell you as much as I can about how things are. I may be giving you unnecessary or unhelpful information too. But, I don't know.
The more information we have, the better.
Did y'all have any questions that, you want to ask me that could shed any more light on it? I may be forgetting something.
Does anyone have questions?
I do. So at the back of the house for the home that you want to purchase, what is between the house and the barn?
Nothing.
Can the barn be moved?
It would have to be demolished.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, and this is Laura. May I point out something to the board for their consideration? This is not necessarily testimony. This is just something I observed on Mr. Jerry Ball's survey. I'm looking at page 5. It seems that Mr. Ball has put, whether it's recorded yet or not, that might be a question for your attorney, but this is hard to point to, but he has put on this survey a new 15 by 20 access easement. If you're looking at what will be the new lot, it's the back right corner, so it's right beside, it's a dotted square beside the barn shed. And I'm not jumping in to advocate one point or another. I'm just a staff person just trying to help provide information. I'm not sure if that helps in your discussions or not, but I wanted to make sure that the board members saw this proposed new easement access on the survey.
We're looking at the actual map.
Yes. Closest house actually to it is across the street. This one's over here.
So one issue there is,
That would be fine by me, please. Comes to easement, that was simply property, if I bought it from them, just allow access.
Mr. Peters, do you want to explain that so that it's part of the record, what your suggestion is?
well, we were looking at this, okay, we're looking at the map. You see right now, the setback is on the side, it's 2 feet 3 inches. The requirement on the side is 8 feet, so you subtract that from 8 feet, it's 5 feet 9 inches. If you were to move that line in 5 foot 9 inches, it would satisfy this requirement. Then what if you look on this, you want shed.
How much space was for rear setback?
10 feet.
10 feet.
Increase this back here by 10 feet, and that would satisfy those.
So you're saying if this, just for sake, this was increased 10 feet, and this was increased 5 feet, whatever you said, then there's not an issue anymore?
I mean, there's still an issue because you're still not meeting the minimum lot requirement. So
That just would resolve 2 issues. That's
yes.
what we have.
To extend 10 feet here, 5 feet there.
3 gas tanks right here. Gonna do it.
Well, back to everything, back to the line or something.
Megan.
Okay,
Is this
I have a
something-
legal question also.
Oh, go ahead.
Megan, if they are to make changes, we would have to wait for those changes to be presented to us
You
in a
can,
new survey.
you can require that, you could approve it with conditions, or you could continue the hearing to another, meeting and require them to, update the survey for you to consider.
So continue. That was exactly my question.
Okay.
Yes.
So
So,
essentially what you'll do is if you've got any more, evidence you would like to enter into the record, otherwise you can,
Start
make a
with the
motion, close
findings,
out
okay.
and deliberate.
Okay.
so I guess if I could say, so we have one or two options. Either we can demolish the barn, demolish the little carport, which is really nothing, it's just a metal top. But we can demolish those things, or me and him
Would you
can,
still have, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but would you still have that driveway there?
the driveway, is
That
just
goes
a
into
driveway for the house.
Correct.
Yeah.
Laura, do you still need setbacks if there's a driveway for the house?
No, ma'am, not for the driveway.
Okay, so outside of those two issues, if we could resolve them, whether he is willing to sell me a little bit more land, 10 in the back, 5 point whatever on the side, or we demolish them, whatever agreement we come to, could y'all decide outside of that issue, conditionally, however you want to, if we can work out the rest of the issue with the square footage of the lot or whatever, if those issues could be solved?
We'll deliberate on that.
Okay, all right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Let me know if you have any
And,
further questions for me.
No, sir. Would you like to speak? Do you have anything to contribute? No.
He's basically here to let y'all know, I got a lifetime right. He's got a lifetime right to action. He's on the owner. And I do. Give him that parcel back so he can sell. And I do have a paper from my other son, state. My other son couldn't be here, family obligations, but he did write a paper saying that state that he was okay. Just trying to do.
They just recently put it in their children's name, but then struck up this deal, they have to get involved in the now it's in there.
He doesn't like that, right? They would give it him, if that's not enough, we'll give him that portion of it back. We'll do that through the lawyer. We have no issue.
Okay. Thank you, sir. At this point, do we present his information into evidence for the record?
You can accept, all of the information provided, or if there is, any incomplete or non-factual, you can go ahead and clear that up for the record, otherwise you can accept it, make a motion, accept it, and then you'll shift out of your quasi-judicial and deliberate.
Do we have a motion to accept the information as presented, or
Make a motion to accept the testimonies as presented.
Second.
all in favor? Okay. At this point, we close the public hearing.
You'll make a motion to close out.
We have a second. All in favor? Okay, at this time, we will go into our deliberation. Feel free to talk and
When we're looking at his survey,
they need to be able to hear us as
Okay.
well.
and we were saying the back, if that was taken care of with the 10 feet, the side with the 5.9, whatever, and in theory, you said there was another,
Yes,
what
ma'am.
is the other
So,
concern?
because that property is zoned for R10,
Uh-huh,
The square footage of
that
the
property
lot.
has, the lot itself has to be at least 10,000 square feet.
I got you,
And then it has all the different setback numbers that are
Okay.
included in that.
I got you, okay.
It also needs to have a minimum lot width of 75 and it's currently 60.
60. Now, will these, if they make the changes, like for the back of where the shed is and carport, is that gonna make the lot footage any less?
It will increase.
Variance from the setbacks or the square footage.
And then the other thing is the 75 foot lot width. It would not meet
Oh, yeah, the
So even if
75.
they do those two things, we're still faced with
that. Still
an
have
issue.
some things.
You want us to take these, step by step through the 4 findings of fact and see how we feel about those?
Yeah, you can go through them individually, and
Okay.
then you can either, make a motion to approve, if you wanna continue it.
Should we deliberate and then make a motion, or go through all of them first and make a motion for each one?
So one recommendation is you go through each individual one and say, you know, yes, this one exists, because you have to have all 4.
Exactly.
And if you don't, you would either deny it for failure to, whichever one was incompatible, not permitted, or you would approve it because all 4 have
Okay.
been shown.
Let's discuss number 1. A necessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property.
I think with this, until we know exactly what the property lines are gonna look like, we can determine that.
We in agreement with that? So therefore, at that point, we'll proceed and not do a vote. All right, number 2, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography, hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardship resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or the general public, may not be the basis for granting a variance. Conversation.
I think it is peculiar because he did inherit the property generationally.
Correct, he did not
Created.
purchase.
Yeah.
He
And
didn't
it was
create the
cons-
hardship.
It was constructed prior to UDO here, outside the town limits of Selma. It was annexed by the town limits by Selma at some point later.
Does anyone else have anything to contribute on number 2? We okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Number 3, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting of a variance shall not be regarded as a self-created hardship. I think we've all just discussed that it was not purchased, it was already inherited, it's passed through the family. Number 4, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, and such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Conversation on that?
Again, I think under the public safety is secured, I think we just need to make sure that we're confident with where the lines are gonna go.
So now at this point, do we need to take a vote on each?
Yeah, you would take a vote on each, make sure that everybody agrees, you've got a 4/5 for each of those, and then you can discuss, do your vote for the overall decision.
Number 1, we're ready for a vote. On the unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. Do we have a motion?
I need to read it again.
Basically, what I think our discussion was that we cannot make a determination until we have a factual survey in front of us showing the adjustments we just discussed.
So if we don't make a motion, we will not vote on this part.
Well, it's not a matter of that. It would, if you would deny this one, would depend on the other findings of fact as well. As to whether he did a continuance or,
You can make a motion to continue to see a revised survey, and then at that point you would revisit, and go through each of the findings of fact to make your decision. So if you guys don't feel comfortable making the decision right now based on the evidence before you, you can either deny it, or you can go through all the information, and decide if you would deny it, approve it, or you can continue.
So I'd like to make a motion to continue this, at a later date, so that when we receive the new survey with the defined lines, we can then go through the different findings of fact and make a vote.
Or the modification to the property if you have, remove the carport and the barn.
right,
Those are 2 points of contention.
not right now.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, on number 2,
So we're good with the petition at this point, right?
Yeah, I would say you don't need to go
Oh,
through
we
any
don't-
other
okay.
findings, so
Okay.
you'll just continue it and you can go through it, once you've got the full and accurate evidence before you.
Okay. So at this point, the hearing will be postponed and continued until we receive new information, a survey showing what we discussed, and where the barn, the shed will be in proximity to that. And then at that time, we can determine if the square footage is an issue or what needs to be done from there.
No.
No, sir. Is that all, Megan? This,
Yep, so you can go until.
no, sir. We want to work with you, but we're trying to come to a compromise for, the property and its best use.
You've got 2 options here.
You're,
We're giving you,
They see, show something, show the extended property, or show something about the barn, and which can I do?
either one, it's your choice.
Take one of it.
Take this barn and the carport down.
Then you pass the,
No,
I can't
that's not
speak on
true.
that, no, sir, I'm not a part of the board.
What I would say was it sounded like you don't have the authority to overlook those unsolved issues because we know what could be done. If it's torn down,
we know what could be done, but we don't, you have not done it at this point.
right, that's it causes us to have to spend additional money with the surveyor to just come back and get a yes on the other things.
But the compromise is to tear down or those 2 structures and leave the survey as it is.
We have 5, we have 10. That adds to the square footage, so that answers your square footage question. Other questions, you know, I mean,
Well, that would answer the setback question.
yeah, I mean, it's either tear it down or leave it, but either way. About the other ones, y'all can decide on that tonight, regardless of those 2 issues, and we could figure out how to solve that. We would have to keep spending money at this point on the surveyor to come back and get enough square footage or something.
But I think at this point, we have to go by what is presented in front of us at this moment.
Today, tonight.
No, that's an option, but they've decided to continue it, so you gentlemen will have to come back, okay?
Once you come back, we will discuss that.
That's what I was arguing, y'all choose that option.
I don't argue about choosing, set, we can come back and follow, I mean, we got 2 options, we can tear it all down, or show it down, and go with the existing of what we got, or we got to go and do it again with the date. So it depends, either one of those, we will be able to come back and decision.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
I mean, I don't want to tear it all down and come back and
No,
No, we're not saying that. That would, I would think would go to staff.
You'll wanna confirm, they're not gonna put you on the January meeting if they don't know if your survey will be prepared by then, so you'll let the town know, when you guys are at a point where it can be heard.
We're trying, as I said, we want to compromise with you, but there's certain guidelines we have to follow as well for the property. Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for patience.
All right. The next item on the agenda is a petition for variance at 169 Highway 70 Interstate. Staff will present, or do we open the hearing first?
So what you want to do is go ahead and have any witnesses,
Okay.
and then you can go ahead and
Okay.
open the hearing.
Do we have witnesses for the 169 Highway 70 Interstate? And state your name and address for the record.
My name is Warren Stansel, and I live at 2525 Buffalo Road in Smithfield.
Thank you. And your next witness?
Kevin Doherty, 3534 Stevens Chapel Road, Smithfield.
Thank you.
So left hand on the Bible, raise your right. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
So Laura, you can go ahead and give the board a brief factual overview of this application.
Sure. Thank you, Megan. So the next application we have to review is at 169 US Highway 70. It is my understanding, of course, it would be better for the applicant to comment on this, but based off the application, it seems that this is already a billboard sign in existence, and the request is to move it to a different location. So why is this not being approved at the staff level? Why are we approaching the Board of Adjustment for an assessment or determination on a variance? Pull up the ordinance. UDO section 17-1110. That's page 19 of my packet. It's copied and pasted for your reference. I believe that this type of sign is a monopole. I don't see any indication that it's digital. So I believe if you're looking at the first line of that graph copied from the ordinance, this type of sign cannot be placed within 500 feet of another sign. And so the applicants are requesting a variance from that so that they can relocate this sign, and they do have some reasons for that, but those are not for me to say. Those are for the applicant to speak to. Again, I've copied and pasted the statutory standards. You already have copies of that, I believe, on page 19. I know that was kind of short and sweet, but there are some, I believe, some helpful UDO references and summaries of the property in the staff report. So I would like to formally request that the board accept the staff report into evidence.
I have a question. I'm not sure if it's for staff or for legal, but I did request from legal the distance between signs, and it appears that the town, the county, and DOT is all different. So does one trump the other, or which are we to go by, basically?
So it's my understanding that dependent upon what road that you're utilizing is going to impact which applies. So if you have a sign that is going to be viewable from 95 or from Business 70 DOT does not fall under that, so it would be
Okay.
within the town of Selma, so the town of Selma would apply.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have a motion to accept the staff recommendations or presentation?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, next, we will open the public hearing. Is that correct?
Yes.
We will open the public hearing. Do we have a motion to open?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. The applicants may come forward. You can come forward one at a time if you like, Mr. Stansel.
Hey, good evening. So we're applying for a variance, from the town of Selma's spacing requirements to approximately 425 feet. You're asking about different spacing requirements. I-95, the town of Selma's spacing requirements are substantially less than what they are on 70. Also, DOT requirements on what they call an FAP route, which is not fully controlled, which is a road like, trying to think of something, like Highway 13 from Goldsboro to Greenville is a 2-lane highway. Something similar to 78. Their spacing's 300 feet apart between signs. Different jurisdictions can make their spacing whatever they want them to be. And then in the case where you would have to meet DOT requirements, then DOT requirements are on top of local requirements. So here it's just the town of Selma's requirements. And so I'm right in the middle of a big development, and I'm trying to relocate to an area that is unusable property for the development. And so we're just trying to make everybody happy here and just be able to exist.
Is this sign a mono sign?
Right now it is not a monopole. It's a wood sign.
We have questions for Mr. Stansel.
Are you going to, in essence, take the existing sign and just move that sign over?
It would be a brand new sign.
And would it be a monopole?
More than likely, it probably would be, but, sometimes where you put it exactly determines different things, and so it would kind of determine on what that area looked like when we got out there. But it would either be like a steel I-beam type sign, so essentially instead of having wooden poles, they're replaced with metal I-beams, or it would be one steel single pole sign.
Because that would determine the distance, based on the type of sign it is.
No, it's so the topography of the land where we went out to build it, put it exactly. Because they're still doing things on the property. Like there's gonna be, I think, a drainage basin potentially in that area. So it's just, I know there's probably still some moving parts to it. And so, maybe some flexibility to say, hey, it could either be a monopole or it could be a steel metal I-beam. And I've got a picture of a steel metal I-beam I could show you on my phone if that would be helpful.
But it would not be digital.
It would not be a digital, no, ma'am.
That was my question. Any other questions for Mr. Stansel?
Should be interested to see the sign.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is a sign that's up in Boone. Sorry. Diabetic, that's my glucose monitor. So that's what it is.
Okay. That's helpful.
So instead of using wood components, you just replace them.
That's metal.
Yeah, it's, yes.
Okay, if there are no more questions for Mr. Stansel, does your witness have anything he'd like to say?
I'm representing the property owner, and as Mr. Stansel mentioned, we're under construction with the development. And the hardship for us is it's right smack in the middle of where we're developing. And in order to create access points that meet NCDOT standards, that sign presents a safety issue and visibility to the entrance. So we're asking that it be moved as far east as possible, which happens to be within what, about 425, 450 feet of another sign that's not on our property. So, you know, the request is, you know, 425 feet is a substantial distance, you know, football field. The other thing is the improvements that we're making are not necessarily in our control. So the entrance points and, you know, how we access our property is because state 70A is actually a state highway. You know, we're required to meet their standards. So that's why we're here for the request. So we support his request to move east.
Thank you.
Kevin, I'm assuming there are no DNR problems with it.
I'm sorry?
I'm assuming there are no DNR problems with
No,
it.
no.
You mentioned that being wet.
To Mr. Stansel's point, whichever sign will be based on geotech analysis when they go to put in, whether it's wood or, you know, monopole or two poles, you know, really depend on the conditions. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah. At this time, we can make a motion to accept presentation into facts
So moved.
to the record.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's go through, we need to close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to close?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's go through our deliberation and we'll go through the different points and deliberate. Number one, unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. And the applicant states they're having to take down their current sign due to development. The only location they're going to be allowed to move their sign to is approximately 425 feet from another sign. Is the consensus that that is acceptable?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to approve item number one? All in favor? Okay, item number two. The hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography, hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardship resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or the general public may not be the basis for granting a variance. Applicant states, we are requesting to move our existing sign to an area of the property that cannot be developed due to the existing topography that causes it to be wet. Do we have a motion to accept item number two as written or deliberation?
I make a motion to accept item number two.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number three, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting of a variance shall not be regarded as a self-created hardship. The applicant states the area of the property is low-lying and is naturally an area that holds water due to the topography of the land. Do we have discussion or do we have a motion to approve number three?
So moved.
Second,
Motion to accept.
all in favor?
Aye.
So we're all in agreement on number three. Item number four, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance and such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Applicant states allowing us to move our sign does not endanger the public or the neighborhood and would allow small businesses in the area to communicate their messages to the traveling public. Do we have discussion or a motion to approve number four?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
With that being said, all of the 4 findings of fact have been approved in a motion. So do we have a motion that we are accepting all 4 findings of fact as stated by the applicant?
Yes.
So
Motion.
I said,
Motion to accept.
motion to accept. Okay.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So Megan, it seems that we have approved at this point the motion to have the sign moved to within 425 feet.
So make a motion to approve the variance as presented.
All right, do we make a motion to approve the variance as presented?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The variance was granted.
Did a negative prior. Make a motion to adopt the information Laura presented into evidence for the public hearing. The
Okay.
information you guys
Do we,
presented.
do we have a motion to approve the information Laura presented by staff into evidence?
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Does that take care of that one, Megan? Thank you. All right, we're moving on to number 3. Number 3 is a petition for variance at 404 North Massey Street. We have a staff presentation. Before, okay, sorry.
No, we need to swear in before you open, correct?
And do we have any witnesses for that?
Do we have witnesses for 404 North Massey Street or the applicant?
There's no way. We'll score that as a no. That's a no.
It's like, that's not me.
No way.
No one is here to represent 404 North Massey Street?
Here's no one's here, so what you guys can do is still open the quasi judicial for Laura to present the information for you to
Okay.
consider the application. And then you can consider what you would like to do from there.
Okay. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing for staff presentation?
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Staff?
Madam Chair, before I'm happy to present information, I do want to present one issue from the beginning, just as an efficiency matter. The applicant has not met burden of proof in providing evidence as to why a variance should be granted. The
Correct.
application was not complete. The town's application asks for applicants for a variance to go ahead and state or provide reasoning why each of those statutory standards burdens are met. And if I'm looking at page 23 and page 24 of the packet. Those were left blank, and that's not for this. I'm starting to get into Megan's area. She can jump in and correct me, but this is not for staff to make those make that argument for the applicant. So I'm happy to present the staff report that I was able to prepare, but I'm wondering if there's any point in that if there's no one, if there's not a representative to speak on the applicant's behalf.
I agree.
Yes, and that was gonna be my next point, wanted Laura to get that out. Yeah, so if the evidence is insufficient, you can either, continue it to allow the applicant the opportunity to meet that burden of proof, or you must deny it.
Okay, do we close the public hearing first?
Okay.
Okay, make a motion to close the public hearing.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have a motion to either dismiss without hearing because proper evidence has not been submitted on the application, to dismiss the variance, or do we want to continue, give the applicant a chance to reappear?
in as much as the burden of proof is not there and most of us, there's lacking the data, I make a motion that we dismiss it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then just for the record to make sure it's clear, if you want to make a motion to enter in what you do have as evidence to support your decision, just so it's in the
Okay.
record.
Do I have a motion to approve what we have as evidence, which is the fact that the application is incomplete? That is in violation of the requirements for petitioning the board for a variance.
Not meet our four criteria.
Exactly, it doesn't meet the findings of fact because there's no evidence.
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. This variance at 404 North Massey Street is denied. Now, number 4 is a closed session. I don't know that we have anything for closed session. So do I have a motion to adjourn?